Hello everyone, hi. It's Will Goodhard here, the juicy evangelist from global market research company Brain Juicer. I'm going to take you very briefly through the pursuit of happiness and the question, can emotions predict in market performance? I'm going to talk about that in the context specifically of communications, although we have sort of explored this in other areas too. Very briefly, an X-ray here of my brain only a few moments ago. Essentially, I just want to very briefly mention the distinction between System 1 and System 2 thinking. This is something, it's a theme explored by many people. These terms particularly used by the Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. And essentially, the distinction between the sort of intuitive part of our brain, the reptilian brain, if you like, which is what Kahneman calls System 1. And this is the part of the brain much earlier in evolution that is still responsible for, well, some people say 95% of our even purchasing decisions, let alone other decisions. The emotional, intuitive part of the brain contrasts that very much with System 2, which is the rational frontal lobe developed much later in evolution, and which, to use an expression beloved of my managing director here at Brain Juicer, Jim Rimmer, it's a filing cabinet that very easily gets full to overflowing, that rational part of our brain. And just to sort of give you a little bit of context, that's the sort of difference in processing power from our friend Mr. Zimmerman there in terms of System 1 versus System 2. So, you know, there's this huge emotional, intuitive part of our brain, and Damasio has it here, you know, we're not thinking machines that happen to feel. We are feeling machines that think. So, you know, Descartes was wrong, basically. It's more I feel, therefore I am, not I think, therefore I am, at least in terms of being a human being. So you have examples like this. I sent the link for this before the webinar to see it live. But essentially, System 1 is that part of the brain that easily, with no fuss at all, can look at these dots on the screen and say, oh, that's a person. You know, but of course that's an incredible thing that we were able to do, and an incredibly intuitive thing to make a pattern out of those random dots. I'm going to ask you to do something along with me. I won't be able to hear whether you're actually doing it or not, but please do play along. I'm going to show you the letters and ask you to shout out into the ether wherever you are, the middle of your office, what colour those letters are on the screen. So do it with this one. Okay, now shout out what colour these letters are. What about these ones? These ones? These ones? What colour are these? What colour are those? Now, if you're anything like most people, you would have found it incredibly easy to make an intuitive judgment for each of those, except that half the time the intuitive judgment was wrong, because you were trying to say that the letters here, for example, were blue, because you saw the word blue, you're making a snap decision, and in fact you then had to have System 2 cutting in, like a kind of traction control to control your intellectual wheel spin, if you like. So, you know, just a wonderful example of kind of how the brain wants to make a System 1 decision, and that's very much the intuitive decision is the thing that goes for the grain. We want to say it quick, and then we have to haul ourselves back as System 2, the rather crummy internal processor, tries to step in and correct us. Another example here, very briefly about intuitive judgment. If a bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total, and the bat costs $1 more than the ball, how much does the ball cost? System 1 wants to say 10 cents. It must be 10 cents. And it's only when you really get System 2 to work and say, hold on. If the bat's $1 more than the ball, then actually the bat needs to cost $1.05 and the ball costs 5 cents. Otherwise, it simply doesn't add up. But again, System 1 there thinks that it can make the decision just as easy as that, you know, but it's wrong. but it does demonstrate how powerful and how principal, if you like, in our mind, System 1 is. If we then move on to the whole question of advertising and communications, well, the current view is that emotions is there simply to help the cut through of a message. But you won't be surprised to know, given the build-up that I've just been providing, that actually there's plenty of evidence that says that emotional advertising, i.e. advertising that appeals to System 1, that huge intuitive emotional part of our brain, actually can be far more powerful than something that even tries to have a message and tries to appeal to the overloaded, stuffed filing cabinet that is crummy processor System 2 thinking. We at Brainjuicer, to sort of explore this, we built on the work of Paul Ekman, the anthropologist, who travelled around the world meeting different tribes and showing them pictures of different people expressing emotions. And essentially he established that there are 7 emotions that are expressed the same on the face wherever you are in the world. And in fact, you can see here from the Paul Ekman series, Lie to Me, he brought this to life very much, and these are the expressions. And we did a similar thing with what we call face trace. We got this slightly no disrespect, androgynous model to make the different emotional expressions, and just took those 7 core emotions, added neutral in the middle, and we asked people which of these faces best expresses how you feel about this ad. So they just see these faces in the context of an online survey, they watch the advertising, and then they click the emotion that best sums up how they feel. And once we've done that, we also have the faces to say, oh, okay, and to what degree did the ad make you feel that emotion? And of course, the beauty of using the faces is that you're actually capturing in a pre-rationalized way, as far as you possibly can, what's going on in System 1. What's the emotional response? We're not asking people to verbalize it. We're not asking people to choose between a set of words, all of which would get that System 2 traction control kicking in and actually spoiling our read on that raw kind of emotional response, which is the very essence then of the power of communication. If you don't believe me, you need only look at Binet and Field's massive study looking at the IPA database, 880 case studies, and you can see clear, significant differences in the power of not just, if we have an emotion, helping put across the message, that's the middle bar there, the yellow one, but actually, the ad campaigns that were purely emotional in nature actually being the most powerful of all. Even in rational categories, I should say. You only need to look at Apple to understand what I'm talking about there in the supposedly rational computing category. So something like the Cadbury Gorilla advert, you've probably seen it for Cadbury's Dairy Milk. If you haven't, don't worry, the link is there in the materials supporting the webinar. If you measure an ad like that using this emotional approach, you get a really clear picture. Wow, look at that surprise there, 12%, kind of very positive, see the reasons why people gave that answer. The happiness, loads and loads of happiness, very little neutrality in the white there, and a sort of acceptably low level of contempt. So, yes, they're saying I can't see the connection between Phil Collins, a gorilla, and chocolate, but, the people who were saying that, who were surprised, much more significant in number. And that is the thing, isn't it? We're not saying, we're not giving them a rating question and saying, I can see the connection between chocolate and Phil Collins, because you get a negative score on that. But the point is that the lack of connection was one of the reasons driving the positive emotional response. So the rational answer is no help to you. It's how people feel that really makes the difference. Essentially, obviously, Cadbury Gorilla advert was made and put out on television, but only thanks to a really brave marketing director who looked at the stats on the right-hand side that said that on all the traditional measures, this ad shouldn't be progressed, and he made a bold decision based on his gut feel that it should go ahead. But, you know, surely we shouldn't be in a position where to do something bold requires you to ignore the market research, because what happens next time you have an ad like that? Or you have an ad that you hope will be like that, but that's actually been badly made. You need something that's going to actually give you an answer and not leave you in the province of guesswork. And in fact, leaving you, of course, questioning all the advertising you ever test because it's not quite the right measure. You can see here on an emotional measure, Cadbury Gorilla clearly would have been progressed. And one other thing, as Columbo would say, to share with you, also by doing the face trace per second, you get a very nice picture about where, you know, what's going on, and you can see the emotional, the negative emotions building in the middle of the ad. But our analysis shows that ads that have that profile actually do very well, provided the negative emotion resolves towards the end. So, you know, much like any good novel or play, you know, there's negative stuff happens, but then it's, you know, it's often resolved, and you can see here the positive emotions building towards the end. And in fact, a double peak of happiness here, which is the characteristic of ads that go on to be very famous. Another example, and again, the link sent with the materials before the webinar, Heineken walk-in fridge. Another ad which went on to be very famous, again, where the marketing team had to trust their gut feel and ignore the fact that all the key measures were telling them not to launch it, and of course they did exactly the right thing, because you can see again, tested on face trace, you know, a great success. And from all of this, we're able to derive a one-number score, hallelujah, an emotion into action score, which takes all those answers from the faces and tells how successful the ad's going to be in terms of the business effects that it delivers. You know, thank goodness for that. There's the evidence from traditional pre-testing, another Binet and Field study saying that you know, using the traditional pre-testing models, ads that haven't been pre-tested tend to do rather better than those that have been. You know, it essentially leads one to the ineluctable conclusion that the dirty little secret of traditional information-based ad pre-testing, i.e. measuring things on the basis of that crummy, overworked system 2, is that it actually makes things worse, because of course you have people needing to tailor their communications to meet this this standard, to hit the numbers, and in fact you end up actively discriminating, like the examples we saw with the gorilla and the walk-in fridge, discriminating against the best creative and most effective work, and the improvements being suggested, you know, ones that will appeal to system 2 and potentially destroy the impact on the dominant and most important and key driving part of the brain, system 1. You know, just very briefly, are all categories driven by emotion? I've sort of referred to that earlier, but we did do a study against the IPA database then, 18 ad campaigns across a wide range of categories with varying degrees of business effects, and indeed we saw that emotion, the emotional measure, was the only one which was accurately able to pull apart the best 9 ads from the worst 9 ads. The rational messages then, and we're talking here, when I say best and worst ads, we're talking here about ads and their business effects in the real world, the rational measures actually giving a bum steer on which ads were best. The persuasion metric, for goodness sake, picking out the bottom 9 ads as slightly stronger than the top 9 ads, for example. Astonishing stuff. And when you come to efficiency, i.e. how much I need to spend in order to achieve a particular effect, those rational measures, again, not so much persuasion, but the other ones actually proving, again, to be counterproductive. So, you know, staggering stuff, but once you understand it in the context of System 1 versus System 2, you understand how the human mind works, you realize the folly of continually trying to beam messages at this tiny overloaded frontal lobe, and, for goodness sake, only ever measuring the the effectiveness of communications in terms of their actual effect on the overloaded filing cabinet, rather than the massive intuitive brain that drives our behavior as human beings. So we got to the situation. You can see the star chart here from blockbuster through to straight to video, the wonderful filmic terminology that we're now able to apply to say how strong the business effects emerging from an emotional ad test are going to be. And Cadbury Dairy Milk there, you won't be surprised to learn, just into the 5-star performing category. And just as a, you know, I'm not going to dwell on this, but just to give you reassurance that it's not just a UK phenomenon, you know, that because we laid flowers en masse on the passing of the Princess of Hearts, Lady Diana, that you know, that somehow nobody else in the world is emotional. Just to reassure, we can see an experiment from the Cassies in Canada showing a similar ability of the emotional measure across categories to predict the award winners, and you know, doing similar work in America as well. And again, you know, we've seen this in many other countries, many other continents. In fact, we've even customized the faces to have Asian faces when we're testing in that part of the world. Just to wrap up very quickly, by all means have a look at these afterwards if you haven't seen them already, but a contrast between a Tropicana advert where lots of fruit in the city, very clear message from the ad, people picking fruit off the trees to represent what it's like, of course, to crack open a Tropicana fruit juice while you're in the city, and another Tropicana ad, you may have seen it, this is an award winner, Breakfast in New York, so lots of upbeat swing track in the background, lots of eggs being cracked and poured into pans, lots of music, happiness and so on, but you know, without quite so much you know, the message, insofar as there is one, people in New York have Tropicana for breakfast. Not exactly that sort of System 2 takeout that the first ad was aiming for, with very much, if you're in the city, you can still have fresh fruit, we provide it. So really nice for the contrast between those two. And Tropicana have been very good enough to provide us with the ROI data. First of all, to show you the rational measures then, close. But if you were making a decision, you'd say, well, you know, I think I'm going to go for ad B, which was the one with people picking the fruit off the trees in the middle of the city, but the emotional measures giving a different story. You know, only a small lead for the other one, for the one with lots of music playing and Breakfast in New York, but the ROI telling a similar story then and aligning with the emotional score. So again, you know, by having an emotional measure, you're actually enabling yourself to make the right decision in terms of what ad is going to deliver business effect. So there they are plotted on our star chart. Breakfast in New York just creeping over the line then into the 5-star category.